My grandfather played the kandang, which is a Balinese drum usually played in big gamelan bands. For those of you who don't know, a gamelan is like Balinese orchestra. He was an incredible kandang player, and even though I don't think he ever taught anyone how to play, people would come from far and wide to watch him play and learn in that way. I was told he was one of the best kandang masters in Bali. In 1973, all the best gamelan musicians from around Bali got a chance to tour Europe, and he was chosen to be part of that team. That's one of his biggest achievements. I used to think it was my grandfather who was the first musician in our family, but turns out both of my great-grandfathers were musicians too, and so that makes me, if I'm not wrong, fourth-generation musician. My dad is a great guitarist. When he started learning guitar, he didn't have the money to buy a guitar or to take lessons, so he used to go to his friends' houses and borrow their guitars and practice for hours on end. They would teach him basic chords and stuff like that, but everything else he learned from listening to cassettes and listening on the radio. He basically learned everything himself. He became a crazy talented guitarist, and when he switched to slide guitar, he was the first person to use this technique in Bali. He also became a huge part of the blues scene in Bali, taking part in the creation of the Bali Blues Festival. Next up, we have my mom. My mom has always loved music. She grew up in London with hippie parents and went to a lot of festivals and parties. She came to Bali and met my dad while he was playing a gig. When they met, my dad had learned all these Bob Dylan songs from the radio but didn't know any of the words to it. So luckily they met, and my mom, who had grown up with Bob Dylan, knew all the lyrics. And they made a little book, and they played and they sang together. It's really cute. Fast forward a few years, they opened the Jazz Cafe, which was the first jazz bar in Bali. And there were some big names that went to perform there, like Morris Brown, Chris Berry, Nako, Omar, and Michael Franti. I spent a lot of my childhood growing up in that jazz bar. I grew up in that live music atmosphere, the happy people, great musicians, and overall, that musical community. There's nothing that can truly explain the feeling of being part of that and being around it all the time. It shaped who I am today. I used to watch my dad perform, and I would always want to go up there and perform with him. So, I grabbed a pair of maracas, and I climbed on stage and sang with my dad. As a child, I played the drums. I wanted to be able to play music with my dad, but still have my own identity as a musician. I loved the drums. Most kids growing up slept with a teddy bear. I slept with some drumsticks. Growing up in this environment, I was constantly surrounded by music, and naturally, this helped me be good at it at school and just in general. I could get by assignments without really studying or trying. In grade 7, I joined rock camp. It was my first musical adventure without my dad. My own choice and my own journey. In that camp, I made a band with my friends called Attack of the Hobes. We made 2 hit songs. The first one is called Bangers and Mash, crazy rock, and the second one was called Serial, a reggae parody. In grade 8, I joined the middle school marimba band with 2 of my friends, Chayton and Ben. Eventually, we got invited to join the high school marimba band, which meant we grade 8s would be playing with high schoolers. That was cool. Over time, I was invited into the official marimba band outside of Green School. We got some regular gigs at places, and we also went to some big events. My biggest event being that I had the chance to play for the Vice President of Indonesia. In grade 11, I joined Battle of the Bands for the first time, which was a crazy experience. Unfortunately, my band didn't win, but I did win Best Drummer. Then Greenstone came along, and as you can see, I'm doing it about music. My friends and family know how much I love music, and it's sort of expected of me to be good as a musician. Growing up, people would tell me I was naturally talented, and although this felt great at the time, it really did make me lazy. If it came naturally to me, what did I have to work for? I never liked to work hard on my music because it was supposed to come easily to me. It was supposed to come naturally. There's this intrinsic pressure I put on myself, this expectation I have to be good at music and to be able to perform effortlessly. Even in primary school, I had this idea of how I would and should perform. If I didn't live up to that expectation, there was this heaviness or this disappointment I felt, and I felt that in primary school. This feeling really didn't motivate me. It led to me thinking that if I can't live up to my own expectations, I should just give up, because it's so much easier for me to say I didn't try than to admit that I'm not instantly good at something. I did this with school, karate, skateboarding, basketball, music, and the list goes on. For example, I would rarely turn things in on time because I didn't get that instant gratification of being instantly good at something. You can't be bad at something you never tried. And that was basically my motto for this entire senior year. I noticed that I started falling behind in a lot of the stuff that my friends were getting good at, and that upset me, especially when it was music related, because it's something that I really loved and I feel is part of my identity. I noticed some people who hadn't been so good at some instruments were getting a lot better than me, and that scared me, but I did nothing about it. I was frustrated that I wasn't becoming better, yet I wasn't doing anything to get better. I just hoped that it would magically happen or that it naturally would. At the beginning of this journey, I didn't want my Greenstone to be about music because I knew I would set the bar too high. I also wanted to go for the unexpected, do something that people wouldn't expect of me so that there would be no expectations of me. I could get away with doing something half-assed, just coast through the year and brush off any hard work to the side. I wasn't willing to put in the work that my project needed. And without this work, my level of skill would never reach my expectations of perfection. It's kind of strange knowing that hard work would help me, but without it being easy and coming to me naturally, I didn't want to start. The destination was all I was concerned about, and the journey seemed like much too much effort. In the past, I could always rely on somebody else to carry me along through the tough parts of all my projects. When starting a solo project that was based on my passion, music, I wasn't sure I could just coast through this one, and I didn't know if I could fake it either. It wasn't easy for me to stick to one thing. In fact, I changed my mind 12 times throughout the year. I couldn't see anything through. At times, outside things allowed me to not commit. For example, coronavirus. I have to admit that a big part of it was me not wanting to do the hard work to reach my expectations. Even now with the project done, it still hasn't reached my crazy expectation, but I've learned to be okay with that. I was fed up about feeling crappy about music, my passion. I was fed up with letting other people down, and most of all, I was fed up with letting myself down. One thing that hasn't let me down so far is music. So I decided to create a song. The concept of my song is taking all the music I grew up with and creating one mix of it all. For me, that's gamelan, Balinese music, blues, and rock and roll. With this song, I wanted to recreate the feeling I had of when I was a kid, growing up in the jazz cafe, and the feelings I felt at home listening to my grandfather practice his drums. First, mixing in the gamelan, which is inspired by my grandfather. It reminds me of my home in Karangasem, my Balinese family, and the sounds of ceremonies. The blues is from my childhood growing up in the jazz bar. The rock and roll reminds me of car rides with my parents, listening to things on the CD. Creating this song was a crazy experience. I jumped into it not knowing anything about composing music or recording it. I had to learn everything as it was happening. I made a lot of mistakes, and it took a lot of effort for me to work past those mistakes. This being said, I loved every part of it, every minute of it. From walking into the studio and seeing all the instruments that I could play with, to having to retake the drum part 25 times because I wasn't happy with how it turned out. For the first time, I was really enjoying every part of the journey instead of just focusing on the final product. Not only that, but I was learning and I was enjoying myself. I was allowing myself to be novice and expert. I was allowing myself to be good and bad. And I'm proud of the outcome. To be honest, the project isn't over. because it's not how I want it to be, yet. I'm going to continue working on my song and make sure it's amazing and perfect. And I now know that that journey to perfection won't happen right away, and that's okay. There will always be improvements to be made and things that need to change. But I've learned to be happy with the talents that I have and the projects that I create, knowing that I worked hard and gave it my all. Instant perfection is no longer what I strive for. Instead, I aim to work hard on my projects and enjoy the process of creating and learning. There are actually two versions of this song. One that I made in an actual studio with the help of the professional, which has gamelan in it, and one that I made 2 days ago at home, which is the one I'll be showing you today. And it's the one I'm much more proud of. So anyway, I'd like to show you my video.